Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And I'm actually making this video as I'm relaxing. I think I'm relaxing. I don't feel like I'm really conceptualizing, but I just kind of wanted to come on really quick. And I just, I don't think that I make a lot of life advice type of videos, and I don't want to. I think I decided, I started this podcast. I started podcasting in 2019. This is not my first podcast. I've had a podcast out there prior. This is I've done a couple revamps, right? So I've been podcasting since 2019, I'm sorry. And I remember 2022, I think I was I actually don't want to do life advice videos and talk to people about what they should and shouldn't do, right? I'm more so just documenting culture, sharing the things that I've learned. And I want to try to stay in that space. I do remember having a live where I was talking to people and I had said some things and I was like, ooh, and let me tell you why I don't like giving life advice, right? It's not because I feel like my life advice is not valid, right? I do believe if you experience certain things and you have a reality, right, that's very real. And that could be helpful for some people. But I also know that it doesn't necessarily deserve to be platformed because it's not universal, right? That cannot be applied to everybody because everybody's having different experiences, right? Do I also know that some people are having the same experiences? Yes. But I also consider the fact that Instagram is very vast and who your video reaches is not anything that you can contain or control. And I also know that there are a lot of young people online and it's very influential. I was listening to a podcast today, and I'm not going to really get into depths about whose podcast it was or whatever. Y'all know I don't be doing the name dropping. Well, I did once, but it was more so in reference because I wanted to give those creators their props. But when I was listening to this podcast today, there was a younger woman and an older woman. And I realized even in listening to them as I'm listening to the video, especially given the last update, and I'm not judging, right? This is somebody who they make content to kind of share with people and they share their personal experiences. But it made me realize that nobody has it figured out, right? Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody has it figured out. Nobody can sit here and tell you what you should be doing, right? This is an older young woman and this is a younger woman, right? And I'm they have no clue. They don't know, right? But the videos and the podcasts up until that point were more so structured in that sense of hey, this is what So I say all that to say that is why I do not give life advice. I don't give life advice. I don't like telling people what they should and shouldn't do. And as you guys see, right, if you're, a part of my little online community, especially on YouTube where I sit my podcast. So this is on Spotify. I don't know who gave me 2.3 stars, but you know what, girl, it's all good. It might have been the audio. Y'all might have been feeling some type of way because I be talking about racism. It's hard to say. I actually can't read the reviews because for whatever reason, Spotify doesn't let you read the reviews. If you can read the reviews, let me know. But at the same time, does it really matter? I don't know. So anyway, I seen, what was I saying? Okay, yes, not giving life advice because it's not universal, right? But I know that right now, like I said, if you're on my community page, you guys know in the YouTube section of post, I literally just asked the question has online bullying become something that we've normalized? And a lot of people say yes. Some people were saying at the end of the day, bullies are bullies. It's just, it is what it is, right? And I do agree to that. I do think that people who were childhood bullies grow up to still be bullies, which is crazy. But, I think that that's a thing. But I more so was making a post that really centered around women's choices, right? So I started to notice just the online, the growing criticisms of Christian women and women who choose to live their lives according to what would be, supposedly Christian values, right? And I'm why are people constantly attacking these women? What is that, right? If you're not doing something that may not be, culturally normative, right? You're good. You know what I mean? Or I'm sorry, if you aren't doing something that would be considered culturally norm, a cultural norm, then people will attack you. And I do think in part that's just due to the algorithm, right? When you show up in the world, your post, your content is going to go wherever, right? Versus back in the day, if you had a community, you would just be around like-minded individuals. So first things first, women's choices. That's what we're talking about in today's episode. We're talking about women's choices and why it is that so many people have an opinion in regards to women's choices. One, I do think that there's a more, there's not a more, there's a new niche that allows for women, right, to finally start capitalizing on other women's insecurities. Okay. Before it was more so like cosmetic companies and, plastic surgeons, which they're now getting their leg back to, right? Okay. That's becoming more accessible to a lot of people. And so there were always like marketing agencies and brands that would market to women's insecurities. But now there's a new wave. There's a new industry, which is called like life coaching, so to speak, right? Life coaching. That is now the new thing that markets to women to say, hey, listen, there's things about your life, things about yourself that you cannot change. I have a solution for you. Right? Even if the solution is to fill your head with lies, delusion, or whatever else that could essentially, temporarily comfort you. Right? But you realize that as I was listening to those creators and a lot of people who give life advice, you listen to people and it's like nobody has it figured out. Right? I think the best thing that will honestly give anybody a peace of mind, like in regards to life, is to actually live your life. You know what I mean? Like if you're dealing with like social anxiety, that just means that you need to socialize more, right? Like you need to get out, you need to socialize more. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. If you're struggling in dating, for example, because I know relationships, obviously y'all know what it is. It's the hottest talk of the town. That just means that you need to date more. Right? Like the more you do something, the better you get at it. It's going to work for you specifically because who you are, your specific background, where you come from, how you was raised, your socialization during your adolescent years, like all of that is very unique to you. It's actually not the same. I have not been socialized in the same ways that you've been socialized, even though we're Black, even though we're women, even though we may have had similar experiences. All right. We've not been socialized the same way. Your paradigms and the things that have shaped your perception are not the things that shape my perception. So guess what? Inevitably, we're going to get different outcomes. Okay. We're going to get different outcomes for a myriad of different reasons. Right. And I can't sit here and try to tell you a one size fit all. And most importantly, I don't need my life, all right, to be the staple or to be the example to say, hey, this is how you do this. Because guess what? You get older and everybody's talking about systems, all right? But the way you look, where you come from, your educational level, now all these things start to impact what you do in life and the outcomes that you start to get in life. And so I say all that to say, life advice is a scam. It's a scam. It's a scam. You got to live your life for you. Live your life for you. Like you got to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And I can honestly say, in spite of all of my mistakes, and when I just take a moment to just dust off all of the social reasoning around decisions that y'all make, like, for example, a lot of people say women get married because they're desperate, because they're insecure, all these different things. Like, I started to realize how listening to all that type of stuff and how hearing that type of stuff for many young people, how that shapes your perception in such a way where you lose trust of yourself. It's like having a therapist in your ear that's like pretty much pulling on your heartstrings and telling you what to do every step of the way. So you don't even know if you're making decisions based on because you want to make the decisions or because you got 50,000 content creators in your ear telling you what decisions that you need to make, telling you what the reason is for making such decisions. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy when you think about it. So I say all that to say the year you grew up, how old you are, all of that is going to play a huge role. Life is not really a one size fit all as much as we like to think that it is. And y'all know this because everybody's talking about merit. Everyone's talking about systems, blah, 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 right? Buzzword. Okay, so if we know all of that, then we know that people get different hands that are dealt, and that is just from birth. Okay, the Bible calls it favor. Hey, the world calls it discrimination. No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously though. Right? Like everybody's having a different experience. And I think as much as I resonate with some things, I also know that life happens, right? So like, even though two people can have the same experience in life, right? Life happens. And guess what? The way a person is raised and how they're conditioned, their social environment, who they work with, who their friends are, like two people are going to walk away from that situation completely different, with a completely different perspective. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I try my best to keep my mouth shut because I don't know. I'm figuring it out as I go as well. I'm not lost by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm humble enough to know that I'm still learning. I'm still growing. And I think the problem is, and I know back in the day, like I don't know, maybe 2022, 2023, we was kind of really off on the boomers. We was off on the Gen X. We was like, we don't want to hear from y'all because y'all mindset is fixed. Y'all think that this and that. And it was more so in regards to like housing. But I think there was a little brief stint in culture where we were like, hey, listen, they don't know their way of thinking, how they move throughout the world is very rigid, is very, narrow, et cetera, et cetera. But then somewhere along the way, we started embracing everybody's perspective and we started feeling like, man, they got to figure it out, right? Maybe because they can present more confidently because they're older and they have, I don't know what it is. Something weird happened there. And I do think in part, I think we're in a dire need of wisdom. Right? I think we're in a dire need of wisdom. I think a lot of people, especially young people who come online, regardless of how people like to, kind of say that mentorship doesn't matter. And I personally think just from working with youth, I do think that mentorship has shifted, right? It's not this thing where people want to kind of listen to you and be mentored in that way. Like I feel like a lot of young people choose their mentors now by just going online and following someone who creates content, right? But I think a lot of people are really needing that. Like, I think a lot of young people and even some older women, right, are needing that. And I think specifically in regards to the Black community, we don't have a lot of role models. So I think that's why a lot of people are like in that space where they're constantly looking for the advice of other people. I think the other aspect too, when you start talking about women's choices, especially in regards to like marriage and children, it is a risk, right? But it's not just marriage and children. Everything is a risk. Right? You may feel more comfortable like risking something that may not be like, I don't want to say life altering, but most things in life are a risk. You know what I mean? And it's not just marriage and children. Like that's just real. Like most things in life are a risk, And I don't know if at the end of your life, and listen here, I'm not a Republic. And again, I'm not here to push anything. All right. I don't care what you do with your life. I tell y'all that all the time. I think most things in life are worth the risk. You have to ask yourself, and this is not just for marriage and children, this is in life in general. And this is what I'll say and I'll wrap up. You have to ask yourself, what kind of life do you want to live? You know what I mean? Do you want to be somebody who takes chances? And I'm not trying to get on my whole like CEO, entrepreneurial, motivational vibe, Tony Evans type of thing. But what I am saying is like, you have to ask yourself at the end of your life, would you be more content with the straight and narrow? And I'm kind of grateful for me. And I'll just use me as a very brief example by just saying that I didn't come from stability, right? So like, I was more prone to take more risk because I hadn't really built like a stable sense of self or like a stable thing in my early 20s. Like it was all about exploration. And I kind of wish that young people had that today, right? Like y'all don't even have the high school years where you could be awkward, dorky, weird. Like I'm thinking about all the fun things that I did when I was like in high school and like how back in the day, the coolest thing was like seeing people who were like double jointed, you know what I mean? Like people who could twist their elbows, like, it was just such a different time. And there was a freedom of not having that sense of surveillance when it comes to social media and not hearing all these different voices every day. Like, you know what I mean? That allowed for exploration. And I think even in my 20s, like, social media was a thing, but it wasn't like a big thing. It grew to be bigger in my later 20s. But I just think about how like we were just living life, making mistakes, and it was cool. But then social media came, and then here comes the induction of shame. And there's no longer this sense of normalcy around making mistakes and learning and growing. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I feel sorry for a lot of people today because I think a lot of people's choices in their lives, quite frankly, are being steered by social media, and it's being steered by people who have opinions and people who are already painting the future to be such a bleak thing, and who are already, saying life is black and white, and then you couple that with a lot of people who are already online anyway. So it's like that sense of individuation, that sense of authenticity, that sense of like, okay, intuitively, I feel safe, right? Like that sense of self-trust is kind of eroded, right? Like you no longer can think for yourself because you've become so dependent on other people to the point where you're no longer making decisions for yourself. So something can feel right for you, but you get online and somebody's telling you this, and this, and that, right? And now you're sitting here stacking your reality, right? Your sense of safety, right? Your life, because at the end of the day, y'all, at the end of the day, when it comes to this life, like advice type of content, I just want you to know you're the only person who's going to have to live with your consequences. And like I said, prime example. All right. No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously, I just think a lot of times people will tell you people will tell you to go against certain things that you may genuinely desire. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to be specific, but like people will never tell you to trade off of that. I don't know why people make it seem like there's a either or type of benefactor. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, in life, everything costs. You see what I'm saying? Like, everything costs. It does not matter what you do. Like, you're going to pay a price no matter what you do. Whether if you do nothing, you're going to pay a price, right? Because there's going to get a point in time where you're going to be out of time. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm not going to say do it for the plot, but I am going to say learn to live your life. Like, I think that there's so much confidence that comes from doing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I have a lot of confidence that came from doing. People talk about regrets. I don't think it's possible to get to the end of your life without regrets. I think a lot of young people and older people today, a lot of people who are really just on that hamster wheel of like lifestyle inflation and just everything that America breeds, you know, a lot of people are trying to optimize for the best possible outcome and scenario, and that's just not life. Right? That's why you have, back in the day, you would have, positive motivational speakers who would come out and tell you like, hey, listen, this is how we roll with the punches. This is how we make the most and the best out of whatever choices that we make. Right? Because life is not this flat rate. It's not this like, that's just not how it works. You know what I mean? You could be doing everything in your power right now to optimize for the best life, and something happens, right? Like, I think we need to recognize, like, and I think this is also a part of just youth culture and its dominance within our society, but like, you don't really have control over a lot. Like, you have control over some things, but as you get older, you start to realize it's a lot that's outside of your control. You know what I mean? And I know Christianity is kind of washed up for a lot of people, but that's just real. You know what I mean? It's only so much that you can control. Right. And of course, that's balance, right? You want to control what you can control, but there's a lot that's outside of your control. You know what I mean? So to kind of be constantly putting yourself in a space where you think that you are in control and that you are the one who's going to determine the things and optimize on the things, it's just like, that's just not true. And I don't think we hear enough about people who make the choices that are the most popular and what their lives become because of pride. You know, when you follow the ways, I'm not trying to go Christian biblical on y'all, but y'all know what it is. I feel like when you follow the ways of the world, when you do what's popular, when you do the modern thing, whatever is trending, whatever is most socially acceptable, a lot of times, which is trending, which is popularity, you never really follow the lives of these individuals to see where they ended up. Right? Like, you don't really know. You just think that, you know, hey, such and such with responsibilities, such and such who made sacrifices, they're losing. And that's how we see people in American society. We see people as winners and losers. Right? And I don't know. I don't know if there's any wisdom in that. I'll leave that up to you. Like I said, I'm not here to give you life advice. I'm just here to make you think. That's all I'm saying. I'm here to make you think. At the end of the day, there is no easy life. And I think that's what you guys are searching for. There is no easy life. You're never going to get something for nothing, right? A lot of what you guys are creating in your minds is nothing but a fantasy, right? The reason why I think people are struggling in a lot of different ways in every aspect of life, okay, this is just my personal opinion, is because you guys are comparing life to an Instagrammable reality. Social media is not reality, y'all. And I know we got to the point where if we hear somebody saying something so many times, even if they've regurgitated it from other content creators, even if they're saying it because it's marketable, because it's popular, because it makes sense, because it's resonant with a lot of people, because it sounds good, doesn't mean that it's reality. Right? It's not reality. And you're going to meet a lot of people like that today. And so you start to sit in your place in life, and you know, you find yourself filled with so many imaginations, and you're so disappointed when the bill is due. You know what I mean? You're so disappointed when the bill is due because you're trying to figure out why did not, certain imaginations and fantasy, why they didn't come to pass. And that's because that's all it was a fantasy, right? It's not necessarily a fairy tale anymore, but now it's social media and it's a fantasy. It's something that you've crafted in your mind. Right? Some people experience loss in life and they get bitter. That's just what it is. Right? And you know somebody's bitter when they can't talk positively about the future. They don't know. They can't talk positively about what happens next. They're stuck. Right? In limitation. They're stuck in cement of this is why life is X, Y, and Z. Right? You don't hear turn the page. You don't hear the next chapter. You don't hear how there's still life after this, because that's just life, y'all. That's just life. And so I don't know. I think a lot of people are spending a lot of time trying to optimize for the best thing. And I can tell you right now, the only thing that I personally think that's going to guarantee, if I'm being honest, is that you're going to run out of life, right? Quite frankly, you're going to run out of life. You're going to run out of opportunities. I don't know what it is about this culture today that just feels like life is constantly on an ongoing type of thing. But it just doesn't really work out that way. Like, I don't know if we're listening to too many college graduates who went to school for 8 years consecutively. And like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't really know like what it is to live life. But like, I'm telling you, like, for real, you really don't have that many opportunities. Like, it gets to the point where the opportunities actually start to slow up. And I'm not saying you need to do certain things. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that we get older. Things change. Time changes. Responsibilities acquire, whether that's A or B. All right. You get older. Responsibilities are going to start to double, whether you choose the path A or B, whether you choose the path E or F. You know what I mean? The responsibilities are going to be there. Okay. You're getting older. You don't have the time that you had at 21, depending on the path that you were taking, and so I don't know. I think we just kind of live in this, and it's like people think that they can make certain choices and still get certain outcomes, and it's like, no, that's not really how life works, and we're so busy looking at people and judging people and having an opinion about people in their lives, not realizing that, like, okay, certain persons have made certain choices, and not all factors were controllable, right? Not all variables of the experiment were controllables. All right, we forget that because that's just life. Right. And before social media, and young people who don't really live life, and some older people too, but who just kind of sit and just observe life and make content. Right. People had an awareness. There was an awareness that like life happens. Right. That was an awareness. We didn't have to come on here with the doom and gloom and the cynicism of being old and ageism. Right. Like, oh, y'all young, whoopty whoop. It's not a fairy tale. Like, OK, it might be. It might not be. It might be. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, live your life, though. Do you? You know what I mean? Do you? And grow and mature and become somebody that, you can be proud of. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Just become somebody you can be proud of, regardless of what you do. Because you could be in a path that may be socially esteemed and be incredibly self-hating and incredibly bitter. I've seen it in my own lives. Y'all know people who got everything and they're still like bitter. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You see people who still be nasty, and it's like, what's the problem? You got all the freedoms that everybody said was hot and popping. What's the problem? I don't understand why you don't like me. Why are you giving me a hard time? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to handle my business. All right. And so, yeah. And then I've seen people who, unfortunately things didn't work out, whatever it is that they may have tried to pursue or do or whatever, and they're incredibly bitter. And I've seen people who, life, because that's what life is going to do. It's going to disappoint a lot of people because that's just life. Because when we're young, even to this day, right? I would say young because I think young people don't really have enough experience. And that's the whole thing about youth, right? It's the optimization of life, right? That's the thing about youth. It's the naivete, right? It's the sense of like anything is possible. Then you get older and you start to realize that, well, there are some limitations. Right? Just quite naturally, right? There are some limitations, right? But for a lot of people who never really experience life and who never really grow in that sense, it's like there's that. And then I'm going to end by saying, I think with women specifically, you have to make sure that like you got to really assess the emotional states of people. I'm sorry, when I say assess, what I really meant was you got to be discerning. You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of women who've made a lot of mistakes and who have lived life because they grown, you know what I mean? And they don't know how to have grace and compassion with themselves, right? Like they almost like they low key, like they don't hate themselves, but they could be on that point of just like constantly beating themselves up and not really forgiving themselves and not really, and I'm not saying that, certain things that happen in our lives, like I'm not here to like, I've experienced things in my life, but you're human. Humans are fallible. You know what I mean? Like humans aren't perfect. Humans make mistakes. Humans miss things sometimes. It's just life. You know what I mean? It's just life. But I don't think that everything needs to be a constant optimization. I don't think everything needs to be a constant assessment. You know what I mean? Because I just think if you spend too much time in your head and online, you're going to miss your life. You're going to look up and life is going to have passed you by. You know what I mean? So you have to be someone who can take chances and take risk in life. Maybe we need to get back to motivational speakers. Is that where we are currently? I think we got too many life coaches and not enough motivational speakers telling people that, hey, listen, try things. You get knocked down, you can get back up again. You know what I mean? Like we need more of that, because regardless of what you do, you are going to experience something. That's all I'm going to say. Everybody's lot is their own. Everybody's portion is their own. We all have our own cross to carry, but you're never going to get something for nothing. And that's all I'm saying. So you can spend your life on the sidelines, sure. You can spend your life on the sidelines. You can spend your life listening to people who really haven't had much experience, right? People be like, oh, well, I've been through this and I've been through that. And you be like, oh, what was the situation? Well, I married my high school sweetheart and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. But then they just have all this talk. And it's like, okay, right? And I'm not saying that to look down on people. I'm saying that to say what I said in the beginning. Everybody's experience is different. Everybody's life, everybody's lot is different. So how can I tell you, a stranger listening to the end of my voice, what to do with your life? I can't. I would be scamming you. That would be dishonest. Consider me a grifter. That would be dishonest. I can't tell you what to do with your life. I don't know. I have a different set of skills. I have a different life. Geographically, I have different advantages familially. I've had certain privilege familially. All right. I come from I'm a black girl. Here are my hobbies. Here are the things that I've been into. Here are the gifts that God gave me when he sent me to earth and he blew his spirit in me. All right. I don't know. I don't know. And there's wisdom in finding the balance in that. And people don't be realizing that. That doesn't mean you just be meek and you don't say nothing. That doesn't mean that people shouldn't have their platforms and do the things that bring them joy and have their own lives. But it is to say that when we're giving advice, we got to have humility. We got to have humility, and we got to assess our hearts, and we have to ask ourselves, have we healed from the disappointment of life? Especially if we're older, right? We got to ask ourselves, have we healed from the disappointment of life? Have we come out on the other side with a sense of freshness, with a sense of renewedness, with a sense of restoration, right? Or are we basking in what was? Are we cynical about what could be? Have we made our bed in the pits of death and despair and the things that have died quite a while ago? You know what I mean? So I say all that to say, you need to just be mindful who you're listening to. Be mindful who you're listening to. Some people are incredibly negative. Like, that's just real. Some people are incredible. Some people have a very negative disposition, right? They're born that way. But then some people have a positive disposition. Some people just have a positive outlook on life. You know what I mean? We have all these critiques today about people who make it and do certain things and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop and the marriages and the jobs. And it's like, no, it goes back to the motivational speakers, bro. It goes back to the foundation. Like, some people just have a positive outlook on life. It's not that they were without fault. It's not that they haven't made mistakes. It's not that they've not gone through the storms. It's not that their lives have been easy. They're not Nepo babies. They didn't go to all the schools and they didn't do all the things. It's just that they kept going. They were resilient. They were optimistic. They had a belief in something higher than themselves that was the thing that guided them during their storms, during their tests, during the doubts, during the disappointments, during the seasons of loss, that said, hey, listen, there is something greater on the horizon. They had faith in something. And I can assure you, it was not faith in these life coaches. It was not faith in the life advice of strangers who, quite frankly, know what they know, and that's all they know. And you should be alarmed. You should be alarmed. You should take that in consideration. Peace.